And welcome everyone to the Ginette Biro podcast. I'm Ginette Biro, and as always, thank you so much for joining me today. And today we're going to do a deep dive today. It was really interesting this morning. I was talking with Spirit and I was saying, what are we going to talk about? Because there's several things I could be talking about right now. And they kind of threw a wild card at me this morning. And we went back and forth a little bit. And they said, talk about death. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty powerful one. And they're like, yes, talk about death. Get people to understand death. And I said, why? Why are we talking about death? It's a very heightened, reactive topic right now. And they said, the reason is we need to take away the fear of death. And so I thought about that for a moment. I said, well, yes, from a higher perspective, for sure. But from a human perspective, it's a highly triggering, multifaceted event, right? Like it affects us in a lot of different ways. So I was like, how do I talk about that in the proper perspective that embraces everyone's experiences and all of that? And it was really quite interesting what they said. So I have some notes that I want to share with you guys on all of this, because really right now, never before in peacetime have we had in the news daily death tolls, right? Like in our news right now, we're being given daily death tolls, and those tolls are of COVID, but we have to look also beyond COVID. I mean, COVID is a big factor, especially in different parts of the world, but the experience of COVID is also increasing the amount of deaths in other factors like overdoses or lots of things. We're not going to go into what all of those are, but there are many ripple effects of it. And there are a lot of people exiting right now to the other side. And it's important that we do talk about it. Now, after I had this communication with Spirit, I really understood where they were coming from. And so that's really what I want to share with you guys is right now, for the most part, we live in a world where we don't want to talk about death. Death is full of anxiety and fear and drama, right? Because we have only the human view and the human teachings of death, which in many ways are very limiting. We don't embrace the other aspects of it. And so, again, their biggest purpose in talking about this was to take away the fear. And by taking away the fear, the one thing we can say to take away that fear is that when we die, we don't cease to exist. That's the most important piece right there. When we die, we do not cease to exist. We don't have this physical body anymore, but we do not cease to exist. And so I want to talk about this a little bit because in my work as a medium, I deal a lot with death. I see it on the regular. I've been shown many different ways that people have died, have had their exit. I've been shown their experiences of what it's like leaving their body. I've been shown their experience of what it's like to arrive on the other side, how that arrival came to be, and the myriad of experiences that are out there. I've seen a lot of them, and I'm not claiming to say I've seen them all, but I am confident to say I have seen a lot of that process. And, honestly, from the last decade or so that I've been doing readings, I trust 100% we do go on, because otherwise, who are all these spirits of people with tangible evidence that I'm talking to that are carrying on and saying, I'm still here, I just don't have the physical body, right? But on top of that, I also had that experience when I had my NDE in 2019, which I talk about in my book, in the book that I'm releasing December 12th. I talk a lot about death, but I also talk about my NDE and what it was like there. And I know for a fact we carry on. Not only do I know from the perspective of a medium, but I know from my own journey there to the other side and back, we do carry on. We do not cease to exist. We just change the way in which we physically express ourselves if we are in a 3D dense earthly world like we are. Now, all of that being said, it doesn't take away from the sadness of death. And that's one thing I really want to explain too is death is still sad, and it is still impactful, and it is permanent in some forms, for sure. We don't have the physical body anymore. Once the physical body ceases to function. It's not a viable option for a vehicle for a soul, right? But we have to see the difference between body death and spiritual death. There is no spiritual death. We continue on. And so we really have to try and take the fear out of death, to not be afraid of it. And they were saying for us to embrace it like we do birth. We embrace birth because birth is the incoming of a soul. A soul is coming into a body that we have made for it to have an experience here. But just as the soul comes in, the soul is going to have to go out. We are all going to approach that exit of death at some point. It's a part of this life cycle on the planet. And so why do we fear talking about it? Yes, it is hard to talk about because it's triggering. But if we talk about it, we can also heal through it. We can grow and we can understand the greater cycle within death. And so they were saying, we celebrate the entrance of a soul with joy and peace, and we have an extra bonus of honestly having them here. But there is a similar beauty and transition when a soul passes to the other side. And when a soul passes to the other side, it's the most beautiful in general. Now I'm generalizing here because yes, there are occurrences where a soul might struggle, but I'm talking about the vast majority of crossings. People arrive into this beautiful embrace of loving energy from either other family members or friends that are there, their guides and angels, and even just the absolute exquisite beauty of the energy on the other side embraces souls when they arrive. Absolutely does. It did for me as well. It was the most loving, beautiful, peaceful, harmonious place. And it was a place that I knew without a doubt was inherently home. It was the source. People often compare God to God, creator, universe, source. And when I was on the other side, I knew for a fact it was source. It was that returning home that a lot of people talk about. It was inherently that. It was a returning home. And so it's important that we remember that because yes, the soul is leaving our planet, but the soul is going back to that source energy, to that home energy where all is well and whole and complete, where they can rest, where they can be at peace. It doesn't take away from their longing or missing those that are on this side, but they have a greater understanding knowing why they're there, and the energy that they're in makes it so much more peaceful. So truly, if we can think of like when someone passes, if we can celebrate it in a sense that like you see more people doing celebrations of life these days, right? Instead of really heavy, olden style funerals, we celebrate their life, and that is a beautiful thing. And souls love when there's a celebration about their life. They love it. Souls are almost always, I would say always, but I'm going to stick with almost always because within the realm of spirit, everything is shades of gray. Nothing is black and white, right? But souls are almost always at the funeral, the celebration of life, the memorial, whatever it may be, because they are honored by it. They're honored by the laughter. They are honored by the jokes or the musings. They're honored by the fact that they are being celebrated for who they were. And they're there and they love it. When my grandfather passed away, when we had the luncheon after, his brother played a song. And when he played this song for him, my grandfather, I saw his spirit dancing. He showed himself as his 35-year-old self dancing. He was so joyful, all dressed up in his gray suit. He was just absolutely joyful to be there with everybody celebrating him. And this is a reality, although it's one that we don't often see, and oftentimes we're hesitant to talk about, but it's real. And so when we remember this bigger picture, sometimes it can ease a bit of the sorrow here. Because 9 times out of 10, when somebody passes, people will come to me and they'll say, I just want to know they're okay. I want to know they're okay. I want to know they're somewhere, right? And they want to be able to reassure that they are somewhere and they are okay. So again, it's that continuation and it's that carrying on. It's like kind of when you go on a trip somewhere and you arrive and you text everyone or you call and you say, hey, I made it. All is well, right? It's a carrying on. And so again, when we think about it, we're so inundated right now of fear and death. And there are a lot of souls exiting, like I mentioned in the beginning. This is true. And there will be more souls that are exiting, not just in a general sense, but when we are at a point of transition on the planet in terms of raising consciousness, stepping into a new sense of collective consciousness on the planet, there's lots of souls that will be a part of that. Now, they're not just a part of awakening, but also being a part of the exiting. So follow me here. Sometimes souls, if we just use 2020, for example, in 2020, there are an abundance of souls who in their life path would have said, around the time of when this 2020 thing happens, this meeting of astrological alignments and whatever conditions are at that point, I'm going to exit and I will have completed my journey. Or I will have completed my journey. Other souls will find that the struggle is too much, that they choose to want to leave. And I'm talking about the higher self level. So I'm not talking about all just the human conscious mind. I'm talking the higher mind, higher conscious self is saying it's time for us to leave. Others will want to stay, but the experience is too much for them, in which then they have to go. And again, we see this this bigger wave of souls leaving every time there is a juncture point like we're at right now in consciousness, in changing of the ages, and changing of awareness. It's the souls that help to be a part of getting everybody to where they are now decide to go, which then makes more room, if we could call it that, I say that with quotations, for new souls of higher consciousness to be coming in to help uplift the planet. So we have to try and remember that higher aspect view so that it takes some of the edge off of the 3D world realities that we're seeing. And if we only watch the world from 3D level, it's extremely harsh right now. It's a harsh place to be. It is scary, and it is full of anxiety and conspiracies and theories of all kinds. But when we go to the higher level, we see that there's consciousness awakening and pushing through right now. And that's where the change is. That's where the benefit is. And the souls that are choosing to exit at this time are doing so for a purpose. There's a purpose behind it that doesn't always make sense in the human level. It doesn't. I can tell you that for sure. There's lots of times where I've said to Spirit, like, I understand why souls cross. I understand souls' journeys. I understand this and this. But why did this soul go? Why did this soul pass at, say, a young age with a young family? What was the benefit of that? And sometimes their explanations are very on point, and sometimes I still can't understand it even after they explain it. But the soul itself, 9 times out of 10, will have an understanding on the other side as to why they're there. So then if I bring this back to my experience, because again, I can only speak best of my own personal experience and wisdoms. When I was on the other side and we went through my blueprint, which was my whole life's design, right? We have a life design, and within that, when we come to this planet, we get to free will how we maneuver that. So we were looking at my blueprint, and they said, up until this point, you have done the things that were needed, and you've learned the lessons that were needed. Do you wish to come back? And I said, yes, absolutely, I want to come back. I've got more work to do. And I was super excited and pumped and happy. Not knowing we were coming into a pandemic, crazy 2020 year, which I still would have chosen to come back anyways had I known that. But what I'm getting at is every time we reach a juncture point in our soul's journey where we have an opportunity to exit or not, the soul, the higher self, will be asked. I was given the experience of conscious memory of that asking point so that I can share it with you guys and explain some of how it works. Not everybody gets that conscious understanding of the asking point, but everybody gets an asking point. Spirit mentioned I shared it on the podcast, probably back in September perhaps, but they said everybody was going to be given a punch card to choose what they wanted to do with this punch card, to stay for a little bit or to exit. And everybody was going to have to go through and punch in that card on some level or another. And so that's kind of where we're at. A lot of those cards have been punched, and now those aspects are playing out. So trust that there is a higher purpose to some of the things, even when it's the things that it makes it very challenging for us to understand. Because although we can say, life does carry on and all this, I do want to acknowledge the very physical human aspect of mourning the loss of a physical person, especially if it's someone who's extremely close to us, or a child or a grandchild, or something that seems absolutely unfair. Yes, it is from a human perspective, 100%. But it's not about punishment, and it's not about unfairness in the form of spirit. It's about divine timings. It's about a soul contract having come to completion. And it's about the higher self of the soul having chosen to agree on that completion point, whether it makes sense to us or not. So that all being said, if we can talk about death and dying, if we can talk about and honor the person that has passed even after they've passed, still talk about them, still talk to them, because they can hear you and try and communicate in different ways. If we can honor them in their journey and who they are and where they're at, and recognize we're going to see them again when it's our time to cross, because we all will be crossing at some point, then we can be a part of the greater flow of the life cycle of birth, transformation, death, rebirth, transformation, death. Because just as a soul exits the other side to come here, they're not connected to them on the other side anymore, because they're busy here, forgetting that they're connected to the other side in most cases. But then they come back. And so we're constantly in a cycle of flow and energy. And so the guides wanted me to share that with you guys today, and I really hope I was able to explain it, because there's so many parts to it, so many moving parts, but I hope I'm able to explain it to give you guys a little bit of a feeling of a warm, safe space, a warm blanket to wrap up in, that no matter what happens to you, to your loved ones, as we journey through this whole experience of the pandemic of 2020, of the ripple effects of what it is doing and the shifts and changes that are still to come, there is a greater energy at play. You will never be lost and alone, and you'll always be moving along on your journey with those that love and support you from the other side. So I'll leave that with you guys for now. I'm sending you lots of love and compassion as we move through these times, and we have much more to come still.